to a Hawksby electric machine.
Then he put the jar on an insulator to help keep the charge in the jar.
He then tried to pour the electricity into the jar, produced by the machine, via the wire down through into the water.
But whatever he tried, the charge just wouldn't stay in the jar. Then one day, by accident, he forgot to put the jar on the insulator, but charged it instead while it was still in his hand.
Finally, holding the jar with one hand, he touched the top with the other and received such a powerful electric shock he was almost thrown to the ground. He writes, "It's a new but terrible experiment which I advise you never to try. Nor would I, who've experienced it and survived by the grace of God, do it again for all the Kingdom of France." So I'm going to heed his advice, not touch the top, but instead see if I can get a spark off of it.
The sheer power of the electricity which flew from the jar was greater than any seen before. And even more surprisingly, the jar could store that electricity for hours, even days. So in honor of the city where Muschenbroek made his discovery, they called it the Leyden jar. And its fame swept across the world.
And very rapidly from 1745 through the rest of the 1740s, the news of this, it's called the Leyden jar, goes global. It spreads from Japan in East Asia to Philadelphia in Eastern America. It became one of the first quick, globalized scientific news items.
But although the Leyden jar became a global electrical phenomenon, no one had the slightest idea how it worked.
You have a jar of electric fluid, and it turns out that you get a bigger shock from the jar if you allow the electric fluid to drain away to the earth. Why is the shock bigger if the jar's leaking? Why isn't the shock bigger if you make sure that all the electric fluid stays inside the jar? That was how mid-18th century electrical philosophers were faced with this challenge.
Electricity was without doubt a fantastical wonder. It could shock and spark. It could now be stored and moved around. Yet what electricity was, how it worked, and why it did all these things was nothing less than a complete mystery. Within 10 years, a new breakthrough was to come from an unexpected quarter. From a man politically and philosophically at war with the London establishment. And even more shockingly for the British electrical elite, that man was merely a colonial, an American.
This painting of Benjamin Franklin hangs here at the Royal Society in London.
Franklin was a passionate supporter of American emancipation and saw the pursuit of rational science, and particularly electricity, as a way of rolling back ignorance, false idols, and ultimately his intellectually elitist colonial masters.
And this is mixed with a profoundly egalitarian democratic idea that Franklin and his allies have, which is this is a phenomenon open to everyone. Here's something that the elite doesn't really understand, and we might be able to understand it. Here's something that the elite can't really control, but we might be able to control. And here's something above all, which is the source of superstition. And we, rational, egalitarian, potentially democratic intellectuals, we will be able to reason it out without appearing to be the slaves of magic or mystery.
So Franklin decided to use the power of reason to rationally explain what many considered a magical phenomenon: lightning. This is probably one of the most famous scientific images of the 18th century. It shows Benjamin Franklin, the heroic scientist, flying a kite in a storm, proving that lightning is electrical. But although Franklin proposed this experiment, he almost certainly never performed it.
Much more likely is that his most significant experiment was another one, which he proposed but didn't even conduct. In fact, it didn't even happen in America. It took place here in a small village north of Paris called Marly-le-Ville.
The French adored Franklin, especially his anti-British politics, and they took it upon themselves to perform his other lightning experiments without him. I've come to the very spot where that experiment took place.
In May 1752, Georges-Louis Leclerc, known across France as the Comte de Buffon, and his friend Thomas-Francois Delibar erected a 40-foot metal pole, more than twice as high as this one, held in place by 3 wooden staves just outside Delibar's house here in Marly-le-Ville. The metal pole rested at the bottom inside an empty wine bottle.
Franklin's big idea had been that the long pole would capture the lightning, pass it down the metal rod, and store it in the wine bottle at the base, which worked as a Leyden jar. Then he could confirm what lightning actually was. All his French followers had to do was wait for a storm. And then on May 23rd, the heavens opened.
At 12:20, a loud thunderclap was heard as lightning hit the top of the pole. An assistant ran to the bottle. A spark leapt across between the metal and his finger with a loud crack and a sulphurous smell, burning his hand.
The spark revealed lightning for what it really was. It was the same as the electricity made by man.
It's hard to overestimate the significance of this moment. Nature had been mastered. Not only that, but the wrath of God itself had been brought under the control of mankind. It was a kind of heresy.
Franklin's experiment was very important because it showed that lightning storms produce or are produced by electricity, and that you can bring this electricity down. That electricity is a force of nature that's waiting